In today's weekly Forex forecast, we are discussing the DXY, the Euro, the Pound, the Dollar versus the Swiss franc, and also gold. And guys, what was supposed to be a very quiet Friday turned into anything but because of Fed Chair Powell's comments. And we'll have all the details in today's video talking about key levels and scenarios for next week. And things have changed. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Before we get started though, if you do want my help with your trading, including seeing my trades live, which by the way, that pound short I put on, I did get out today before Powell's comments, all documented in real time in Discord for over 100 pips in profit. So if you want to see those guys, also VIP only videos, daily trade setups, commentary throughout the day in real time in Discord, and also the full course, be sure to check out the link in the description of this video. Like I said earlier, the price is also going to go up, guys. It's not about trying to make more money, but the fact is my costs have gone up over the years. I've kept this price the same for years. And so it's just kind of time to change it. It's the environment that we're in, unfortunately. Okay, so I just want to let you guys know that in advance so that there's no surprises. All right, so looking at the DXY, guys, 4-hour time frame. So Friday, what was supposed to be a relatively quiet day based on the event calendar was obviously anything but because of Fed Chair Powell's comments. And basically what he said, I'm not a fundamental trader, but basically what he said is that it might be time for a change in policies. So this is very different from what he's been saying, because what he's been saying is kind of, let's let the data show what it's going to show, and I'm in no hurry to change policy. And now all of a sudden he's changing his tune. So it looks like the Fed is going to be cutting rates in September. So right now, guys, the DXY did rotate lower from this area. Now I want to point something out here. We talked about this all week long, but if you look at the daily, and this is why I often say, guys, that these are not exact levels, they're areas. So 98.50/60, notice how this candle closed just above. However, the same thing happened back here. This right here was a resistance area for the DXY. In fact, just before Powell's comments, I said in Discord to VIP members that right now the DXY was still battling this area. Okay, so really when you look at this here, this area was as high as about 98.65. And we talked about this in Discord. Again, look at the daily closes back here in this area, right? So this area through here, these highs, this was still resistance. The DXY never broke above this on the high time frames. Okay, so that's very important to understand here, because this is also why I was getting out of my pound short for 122 pips in profit this week. And yes, I did get out of that. We'll talk about that more in the pound section of this video. But I did get out of that trade just before Powell's comments. And one reason for that, though, was the DXY battling this area and also going into the weekend. The profits were there. I like paying myself on a Friday if those profits are there, which they were. So anyway, guys, looking at the DXY now, obviously we have a very sharp sell-off here following those comments. So what we have right now is, if we go here to the 8-hour time frame, right, you have basically the DXY failing to hold above levels like this. So we discussed this past week, right? You can see the bounce right here from this key level. And, you know, guys, look, even though we are reversing lower today, throughout the week, there were a couple of opportunities here to get long on the DXY. And we talked about this in VIP as well. So this right here, just because we're reversing on Friday, doesn't mean that there weren't long opportunities on the US dollar throughout the week, because there absolutely were. All right, but this right here, if we see the DXY close now below here, which is already closed the 4-hour below, it looks like we are going to close the daily and weekly below that area. If we close below this region through here, then all of a sudden this entire move becomes a failed breakout. Now, typically when you get stuff like this, look no further than this back here, right? We had the market breaking above those 99.35 highs, and we saw it fail and of course rotate lower. So this is kind of similar, guys. We're seeing the market now fail to hold above here. So in my opinion, next week, if this holds up, we are potentially looking at the DXY moving lower. Okay, so again, a very similar price action here to what we saw above 99.35, and that could play out the same again next week. Now let's talk about resistance though going into next week, because what happens a lot of times is traders see this and they see it moving lower on a Friday. They think, oh my gosh, I'm missing the entire move, and they'll chase this lower. Okay, in my opinion, guys, that is always the wrong thing to do. It doesn't benefit you in any way. Sure, maybe you make some profit here and there, but it's going to teach you bad habits, and that's going to hurt you in the long run. The better thing to do here is looking at the daily chart, right? You've got this area right down here, right? So 97.7 that we've talked about over the past few weeks, and then you've got this area through here. Now, typically what you tend to get, even with moves like this here on a Friday, is early next week, you probably see at least a partial retrace of this move. Okay, and that's simply just late shorts getting taken out here, because again, what retail tends to do is you get moves like this, and on a Friday, everybody is piling in to dollar shorts. Okay, they're all piling in down here thinking, I don't want to miss the move. What you typically get though at the beginning of the next week is the market flushing those late shorts and then reversing lower. Okay, now one thing to consider here is I was looking at the monthly TPO earlier, and basically the value area low for the month of August comes in right around 97, 90, 98. Okay, so right up here. Now, I don't know if the DXY is going to get up here next week, simply because if we break below 97.7 today, then this is going to flip to resistance next week. However, what I will say is that if we see anything between here, next week, early next week, in my opinion, that is a potential short, okay? And it's a potential short for a move down here toward the bottom of this channel, which also aligns with the bottom of that 2011 channel that we've talked about. So all of this is kind of setting up, guys. You've got that failed breakout above here, and you've got this level intersecting with that 2011 channel, which if you're new here, let's go ahead and take a look at that here on the monthly time frame. So you can see that, going all the way back here to these lows, right? You've got this low down here, you've got this low, and then you've got this recent bounce. So this is a massive channel, guys, that goes back over a decade. And so you have the bottom of this channel. If we go back here to the daily time frame, you can see where this intersects right down here, right around 96.70. Okay, so close below here this week, this flips to resistance. You've got support coming in down here at the bottom of this channel here, the short-term channel. And then, of course, this down here is your 2011 channel support. Okay, so I do think we're looking at a lower DXY given the price action we're seeing out there this week. However, what I will say here before we move on to the euro is you've got to be really careful once the DXY gets down here. If it gets down here, you have to be really careful off of this low down here just because we do have that monthly channel going back to 2011. And like I said recently too, what you'll notice here is if we go to the monthly time frame and you look at these bounces that occurred back here in 2011, and then also this one through here, so this price action and also this price action, all of this took months to play out. So this was months of bottoming. This was also months of bottoming. So what I mentioned a few weeks ago at the beginning of August was don't be surprised if, even though we saw this monthly bullish candle right here, don't be surprised if we see the DXY just go sideways here for a few months. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So the point being that if we see the DXY come down here toward 96.70 next week, again, you've got to be really careful of staying bearish on the US dollar as we approach that area, because again, we could just see the DXY continue to range here over the coming months. All right. So that's what I think for now, guys. I mean, again, if we see the market close below here this week, which it looks like we will, then we are looking at this region up here as key resistance going into next week. And of course, support coming in down there around at 96.70, maybe 96.80. All right, so let's move on to the euro. And if you guys are enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also hit that like button because it does help out these videos and I appreciate it as always. Looking at the euro, we talked about this a couple times recently. Okay, so the play last week was following that DXY strength that we saw, right? We were looking for shorts on a break below this trend line. So we discussed this in the videos. You can see the breakthrough here. We had a perfect retest right in this area. And what I mentioned there was that you can see we had these two lows back here. Now, these purple dotted lines are what are called poor lows. That's a TPO term. It's also an unfinished auction. So what it means is that based on the way that the market profile looked during these two lows, what it suggested was that sellers were not finished. Sellers were not finished through here. And so what you tend to get with these poor lows, and the same thing with poor highs, is you get the market taking these out. And sure enough, look what happened here on Friday. Okay, the euro took out this low down here, tested that support level, took out this low, cleaned up both of those poor lows, and then we had the bounce, okay? And again, I talked about this in the VIP Discord before Powell's comments. I'm not trying to say that I called this because obviously nobody could have seen this coming. But the point here is that, what I mentioned there was that, hey, the euro just tested this. The euro has taken out these poor lows, tested support, and is bouncing, so we could see some relief, okay? Again, I had no idea that this was going to happen. Nobody did. But, the very early, start of this move was very apparent from that support level and also those poor lows that got taken out. Now, as far as resistance up here for the euro, we have this single print back here, which just got taken out. Okay, so again, these tend to serve as magnets. Look no further than this one right here, which originated with this move lower. We talked about this again last week, right? This right here was a perfect short for anybody looking for shorts. And the advantage of being in Discord, guys, is that I talked about this right here before it even happened. I told members when the market was trading back down here to watch for a retest up here in this area. Okay, so with the euro now hitting this second single print up here at 117.38, there is that chance for a rotation lower. You've also got this pocket of congestion up here. Okay, so this entire area up here is going to be resistance for the euro. to where we could see an early week rotation lower next week, okay? Now, as far as support goes, if we look here on the 4-hour time frame, okay, so let's look at this little pivot right through here. So what you'll notice is that off of this high from right back here, we've got this high, we've got these lows through here, and resistance, okay? So this right here around 117.16, this is going to be the level to watch going into next week. Now, furthermore, you can also see that August 5th trend line, right, which was the catalyst for this move lower down there toward 115.87, this level has now been reclaimed, okay? So what that means is that this area down here, I mean, first of all, you could really call this down here a failed breakdown, right, from the euro, because it has now reclaimed it, right, this down here. So this region through here, 117.16, maybe a bit lower, is going to serve as key support for the euro. Now, of course, we have that resistance level just above here. We also have 117.88 or thereabouts. Okay, so in my opinion, guys, if this holds up, and I always kind of cringe when I start to draw arrows like this because I don't want people taking this as gospel to mean that it's guaranteed. But if the market stays above here, we could see something like this next week down here into the support level and then potentially getting that continuation. And this lines up, this agrees with what we're seeing here on the DXY, right? The market breaking below areas like this through here and this region flipping to resistance. Because if the DXY does this, then chances are when we look at something like the EURUSD, we are probably going to see the opposite of that, okay? Now, again, no guarantees. If the market were to break back down below here on the 4-hour or higher, then we're looking at a range-bound market, okay? But as of right now, it does look, pretty bullish, reclaiming this area, okay? So let's move on to the pound, which, a few things happening here, guys. I've cleaned up this chart, taken off the channels that we talked about. There was a channel back here that we traded, that I shorted off of the breakdown through here, 135.38. Got out today on Friday just before the comment, so I actually got out right through here. And this is all real time, guys. This is not hindsight. This is not me trying to sound good. This is all, in Discord with timestamps and everything else. So I got out because it was Friday. We were going to the weekend. I knew that Powell was speaking soon, and I didn't want to take chances giving back profits. So obviously glad I got out of that short for 122 pips in profit. And moving forward, what we can see here now from the pound, this is really interesting because first of all, we have the market still range bound and we have it holding below these highs up here. However, at the same time, we have the DXY breaking down, showing weakness, and the pound now trying to reclaim levels like this right through here. So right around 135.20 or so, if the market can flip this to new support, if you'll notice, what we have here is a single print down here at 135.14. So like the euro, what I think we could see if the market can hold this, and that's still a big if because we, obviously don't know that. We don't know if the market's going to hold above here or not going into that weekly close. But if it does, then what we could see next week is a move down here, take out this single print, right? Flush those late longs here, and then potentially get that continuation up here toward the highs. Now from here, buyers are probably going to want to defend this. However, at the same time, what you'll notice here is if I move out, you can see these lines up here. So these blue lines, guys, are single prints, also imbalances from this move lower. And what you'll notice is that we never got a fill of this region. So these single prints are, basically open for business, right? So if we see the pound come down here, take out this area, I would expect buyers to step in here. You've got resistance up here around 135.80. Above that, we have all of these imbalances up here around 137. So the play here is probably becoming, pretty explanatory, where you can see that if this holds up, right, if the market can hold above here today, then we could see that push down here into this level and then potentially get that push up here over the coming weeks. Now, again, you've got to be careful with these highs up here because sellers are going to try to defend this region. Okay, so you've got support down here if the market can close above today. Again, still a big if. You've got resistance up here, and then you've got these single prints that could serve as, magnets, so to speak, for this market over the coming days and weeks. All right, so that's what I'm looking at now for the pound. Pretty clean there, guys. So I'm looking to trade this, both ways, really. I mean, I shorted this in the past week for over 100 pips in profit. Very happy there. And now I'm just waiting to see if we get that confirmation above some of these key levels to start targeting some higher levels. But again, I'm holding off on this. I'm waiting to see where the weekly close is, and also just waiting to see what we get here from the DXY as we head into that Friday close. So the dollar versus the Swiss franc, another really interesting chart right now, guys. And the thing about this, okay, so let's walk through what we're seeing down here in this area. And again, if you guys are enjoying this content, I urge you to subscribe to the channel. Also hit that like button because I'm putting out videos like this every single day to keep you guys in the loop. All right, so these purple lines, poor lows, right? Unfinished auctions. So back here in this area, the market profile was indicating that sellers were not finished. They were not finished through here, okay? And that's simply based on the market profile at the time, the way the price action unfolded, and even the volume profile during those lows. Okay, so what this means is levels like this tend to be revisited. Now, as I mentioned in Discord this morning, areas like this only suggest what happened previously. They don't really serve as magnets for a market, because what you need is a trigger, a technical trigger in the market on the higher time frames to open up these areas. So before today's events, these areas down here were protected by a couple of things. First of all, you can see that off of these highs up here, we have this 4-hour descending trend line. So on Thursday, the market broke out. So we had it protected by this level. Now we also had it protected by these August lows. Now fast forward to Friday, and what you can see here is that this was a failed breakout. And again, this is why, guys, over the past few years, I have switched from trading breakouts to trading fakeouts. So this breakout failed, and now we have the market trading below these lows. So this right here, this failure, okay, this is your technical trigger. This now exposes these levels down here. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, guys. It's really, very simple when you take a step back and really think about it. And furthermore, you have this descending channel from back here that we discussed in previous videos. So off of these lows, you've got all these highs through here, and this could become a factor over the coming weeks. Now, you then also have this multi-decade support level down there at 77.20. Okay, so I'm not ruling out a move all the way down here, at least to the top of this channel, potentially even 77.20 over the coming weeks. However, in terms of the play next week, okay, and this is just my opinion, obviously never financial advice, but if we see a retest up here off of these lows, because again, the difference here, guys, is that this now was a failed breakout. Okay, this was a failed breakout from bulls, so we know now that they are retreating, right? You have the market breaking below this level. If we see a retest up here, we probably get that rotation lower down here into some of these lows, all these poor lows down there around 79 or so, okay? So that is the play. Resistance up here, you've got support and potential targets down here in this area that could be targeted if the market holds below that 80-30 mark, okay? So pretty straightforward there from the dollar versus the Swiss franc, but I do like that setup just because, again, you have that higher time frame technical trigger. You've got these poor lows down here, these unfinished auctions that could serve as magnets, so to speak, for this market and drag it lower, okay? And again, you also have the DXY breaking down, right? So we know that the DXY is now breaking down. That also kind of adds some confluence now if you're looking for, obviously dollar versus the Swiss franc shorts. All right, so looking at gold, guys, XAUUSD. This one we discussed earlier in the week as well. And you can see here, this was that falling wedge that we talked about. And you can see lows through here, perfect pattern. And one thing I mentioned in the last video was that these lows back here, right around 30.30 could serve as support. Obviously a little bit lower than that, right around 33.20. So 33.30 didn't quite hold up exactly, but all in all, this general area did serve as support. Now, I did not take this trade simply because if we had seen gold actually rotate lower, a little bit lower down here toward 33.05, this was that single print down here. This 33.11 low didn't quite take this out. If we had seen this move down here, come down here, and then wick below this low, that right there would have been very appealing for a long, okay? And I was actually eyeing that, but of course, we didn't get down there here on Friday, and I don't think that we will at this point without something, significant changing over the coming weeks. But the bottom line for gold is that you have this pivot through here. So right around 33.85, you've got these lows back here, these highs, these lows. This ended up becoming a failed breakout, and you got the rotation lower. You also had to have this pocket through here, right? That's an imbalance right now for gold. And that's exactly what it's coming into at the moment, okay? So this area up here is going to be resistance. Obviously above that, you've got this region around 34.20, which you can see these lows back here. The market came close to it in this area. So you kind of have this little pocket up here as well that could serve as a magnet for gold. Now, as long as the dollar stays weak, okay, what we're probably going to see here, or what we're likely going to see here next week, is this area down here. So if we take a look at the daily chart, you can see that off of these highs and lows through here. So if I map this out, you can see that off of these lows back here, also these recent highs, and you can even go back a little bit further, guys, all the way back here to these highs. And you can see where this region right through here, right, this is going to be your support area for next week. So if we see gold, right, hold above here, going into the weekly close, which it looks like we will, then this is going to be your support area down here off of these highs. And then from there, we probably get that push up there toward 33.85. Now, of course, there's no guarantee that we get that pullback, but I do think that, any pullbacks here are probably going to be buying opportunities up there toward 33.85, potentially back there toward those range highs up there around 34.20 to 34.30, okay? So pretty clear cut support down here, resistance up here in this area, and also 34.20, 34.30. Okay, but again, as I said before in other sections of this video, I think that trying to chase these moves right now is always going to be ill-advised. You're better off waiting for next week, see what we get here from this market, and just going from there, right? So we'll see how this closes up here this week, guys. But all in all, like I said, the DXY does look relatively weak here. And really, this structure that we're seeing right now being very similar to what we saw up here, this failed breakout, and now you have this failed breakout. I mean, even the impulse, even this move right here is very similar. So I do think that this is going to lead us to a potential move down there toward that 96.50 to 97.70 area. But again, I think that looking for a retrace early next week into this pocket would be the smart move as things stand right now. All right, guys, I hope the video's helped. If it has, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Don't forget to join us in VIP. Check out the link in the description of this video for 85% off lifetime access. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again next week.